Life Audio.
Welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations, your authority in navigating the world of homeschooling diverse learners. Featuring Peggy Ployhar from SPED Homeschool, Annie Yorty from AnnieYorty.com, Leilani Melendez from Living with Eve, Stephanie Buckwalter from eLARP Learning, and Dawn Jackson from Dawn Jackson Educational Consulting and Tutoring. With over 75 years of combined homeschooling expertise, experiences, and perspectives, this group is eager to share their wealth of wisdom to empower your homeschooling journey. So grab your favorite mug, settle in, and get ready for insightful discussions, valuable insights, and practical tips as these experts and their guests dive into the hottest topics in homeschooling. Whether you're a seasoned homeschooler, just considering this path, or anywhere in between, you don't want to miss a minute of these enlightening conversations that will empower your child to thrive in their homeschool environment. Empowering Homeschool Conversations is starting right now. Join us to give your homeschool the power boost it needs to successfully educate the unique learners in your home.
Today, we are going to talk about the key to maximizing your home education budget. And with me today, I have Krisa Winn. Krisa is an educator and sought-after public speaker who has served homeschooling families for more than a decade as a special needs consultant at HSLDA, the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. She worked with thousands of fellow homeschooling parents, offering personalized guidance, resource, practical help to families homeschooling children with special needs. During her 21 years as a classroom teacher, she taught children of all ages, abilities, and circumstances, and she's also worked as a private tutor, an early education intervention specialist, and an academic language therapist in training. And I'm proud to announce that Krisa, as of today, has joined the SPED homeschool family. She is now our new director of consulting and partnerships. And I'm just super excited to welcome you today, Krisa, and have you for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Peggy, and I'm excited to be a part of what's going on with SPED Homeschool.
Absolutely, yes. We have some exciting news to share with you amongst our conversation today. But yes, we have been given some amazing grants and donations by some wonderful companies that I definitely want to highlight as we kind of get started, because they have made this possible and made it possible for us to be able to really develop a program that is going to be able to help families in a much broader, bigger sense than we ever have before. And I know you've been screaming for it. We definitely want to make sure that we create a program that meets your needs, doesn't just go out and like throw things at you. So for sure, we want to do that. But we really want to thank Rainbow Resource for their donation, Building Faith Family, which is Steve Demme, Knotgrass History, BJU Press, Sonia Schaefer, Mache, the Minnesota Association of Christian Home Educators, and then Eternal Ariel, which is actually my other business. But I'd give a lot of those proceeds to fuel SPED Homeschool as well. And then I know we do have some other donors that we're still working with that'll be on. This is at the bottom of our new home webpage, and we just want to acknowledge them in multiple places for all of the support that they have given us, because we can't do this without their help. This is a really hard industry to be in, and we are so thankful for their partnership. And when they heard that Krisa was available and that she was looking for a new trajectory for her career, I heard from so many people, and I gotta say that, and actually I should read this email because this was so good. I heard back from the people at Mache, and they said, Krisa Winn is the perfect fit. They were so excited. They had met you at a conference, and
I've been there a few times, so I love going there.
Yeah, and they know me and they know you, and I think we're perfect counterparts for each other. So yes, we are super excited for the vision that God is directing us on for SPED Homeschool, and so yeah, we'll have more announcements in the coming months about as this program kind of comes together and we start figuring out how that's going to launch. I probably wouldn't say we're going to do much, but there'll be things coming out until maybe the first of the year. But we really want to make sure that we set up things correctly and well so that they can continue and be successful. So yeah. But so I've given you a little introduction, Krisa, but I would love for our audience to get to know you a little better and for you to be able to share some of that too. Just anything about your background, consulting, or anything else you feel is pertinent to share on this topic or just in general.
Absolutely. Well, doing things on a budget is very much in my realm. I'm all about that. That's very important. So yeah, I'll dive into that later. But I am originally from between Dayton and Cincinnati, Ohio. So I'm a Midwest. Actually, I've lived in the South most of my adult life. Even when I lived in Virginia, they say that's the South. I don't really agree, but anyway, I guess it is.
I don't know. Yeah.
But I always knew I wanted to be a teacher when I grew up. And so I actually went to Bible college directly out of high school. And that's where I met my husband. We got married. I was 19 years old when I got married.
Oh, wow.
So we were really young. And then I went to university and got a degree in early childhood and elementary education and started my teaching career. And I had the opportunity to teach in lots of different places. We moved quite a bit. In fact, every couple of years we would move, and sometimes it was a little move, sometimes it was a big move. But later on, I got to see how God was going to use all of that to kind of prepare me for what I would do later. We weren't, something that's a big part of my story is that we weren't able to have children. We tried to have children, we couldn't have children. And we ended up building our family through embryo adoption. And so we adopted our babies as embryos. And so it was 20 years into our marriage before I got pregnant. And we had our first child when I was 42 years old. So at that, and so that was just an amazing experience to just kind of be in the waiting, but I was still teaching during that time. Complete denial that I would have to go back to work. I never thought that after waiting all that time that I would have to be a working mom. I never thought I would be a working mom. But I was, and so it was really hard. But I made it through by God's grace. Our daughter's name is Grace. And so by God's grace, I was able to work. And I was working in the public school at the time, teaching kindergarten, which was kind of, it was a joy to work with. I loved working with young children. And so that was a lot of fun just because even though it was a very stressful time in my life, a happy time, but a very kind of sad time because I wasn't at home with my child. They always kept me in stitches. I never knew what they were going to say from time to time. So I'd come home with lots of stories. So it was fun. But then 3 years later, we were able to have another child through embryo adoption. And so now I've got two. And I was going to continue to teach because we needed the money. I told you money is like, I'm always trying to conquer the money thing. And so I was just, I don't know, Peggy, if I had postpartum depression, I don't know. But when I was at work, I wanted to be home. And when I was at home, I didn't want to be at work, but I wanted to be somewhere else. I just felt overwhelmed, like I was drowning. I felt very much like I was drowning. And when I'd kind of gotten into that school year, and it was just so hard. I literally felt like I was in an ocean drowning, like I said. And one night I was driving to a Bible study, and I didn't hear an audible voice, but I drove past my school, and I just sensed God kind of speaking to me and saying, if you keep holding on to that job, you'll never accomplish what I've got planned for you to do. Like in my mind, I thought, I've got to keep working. I've got to keep this job because we'll never make it if I don't. And I just felt him saying something shifting that night and saying, you need to let go of that because I have a different plan. Yeah. And so it was like a week or so later that everything fell apart for me. My childcare fell apart. My transportation for my daughter to get from preschool. I had this elaborate scheme, which I will not go into, but I had a pretty elaborate way that I got everybody where they needed to be.
I think everybody
where I needed to be.
Work, yeah.
Yeah, it was awful. It was just awful. I dropped my babies off every day with a sense of dread of like, what's going to happen? If one thing doesn't work out, how am I going to get everybody where they need to be? And my husband at the time had a 2-hour commute. So, I mean, it was just, we were stretched then.
Yeah.
So anyway, I knew that day when everything just started falling apart that I was like, okay, Lord, I get it. I understand now. And he had actually tried to kind of direct me right the very first day I had to go back to work when my youngest was just 10 weeks old. I had childcare fall apart that very first day, but I came up with Plan B. But now Plan B has fallen apart. And I went in the next morning and I gave a leave of absence. And it was like middle of October. So not a good time to be like leaving my school position.
We will continue this conversation after a short break.
Have you ever taken a personality test like Myers-Briggs, StrengthsFinder, or the Enneagram? These tools are great for understanding your own strengths and weaknesses. But what if you could do the same for your entire family? Introducing the Family ID Assessment, a free tool that's been designed to help your family grow together. Within minutes, you'll learn about the unique qualities, culture, and shared personality of your family, offering life-changing insights that can strengthen your relationships and improve your family dynamics. And the best part? It's completely free. Visit family-id.com today and start your family's journey to growth and connection with the Family ID Assessment at family-id.com.
Consider this. Without God, can we have a democracy? And if religion is removed from Washington, who pays the ultimate price? There's a new movie out called God's Not Dead and God We Trust. The story of a small-town pastor pushed into the political arena to run against a powerful regime, forcing faith and religion out of American politics. There's no better time for this movie. In today's divided culture, all of this upheaval and yearning for spiritual leadership is America's collective scream to keep God in the forefront. God's Not Dead challenges mainstream liberals in the battle for spiritual leadership, hope, and faith in America. Watch it with your family and friends. And remember the words of Ronald Reagan, without God, democracy will not and cannot long endure. Folks, we are one nation under God. Don't miss God's Not Dead and God We Trust, a Pinnacle Peak production, in theaters September 12th.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.
When I did, I tell people that I felt like I was stepping off of a skyscraper and invisible steps came underneath me and I just, we were taken care of. And we were. And it was during that time, through a lot of different things where God had his hand on it, that I was connected with HSLDA, which is, if you don't know, I know you know, but if your audience doesn't know,
yes,
it's a national homeschool advocacy organization. And for some reason, they hired a public school teacher to come work for them. And I ended up working with them, for about 12 years as a special needs educational consultant. And through that time, I could look back and not only see my education background as being something that prepared me to work with homeschoolers, but I could also look back at all these different places that my husband Byron and I had lived through the years. And every spot, every location, and we got married in 85. So this is like going way back.
Yeah.
From our very first married housing on the campus of Arkansas State University in the 80s, we met homeschoolers. I met homeschoolers at all different stages in all different places around, where we had lived. And so I was familiar with homeschooling. I'm not terribly familiar, but I was familiar with homeschooling, and that kind of all married together then with all my different backgrounds and teaching experiences that I'd had over 20 years. And then just knowing people personally that had homeschooled, it all came together. And so that was kind of my professional, and a little bit about my family. When I left my teaching job, my husband, who is from South Arkansas, he said to me, you've been teaching everybody else's kids. It's time for you to start teaching our own kids. And so Gracie was 3 at the time. So we kind of did what I called my pre-run homeschool. I mean, obviously, I believe that we're all teachers from the very moment our babies are born, right? We're their first teacher. But I kind of did my little run through, I guess, and we started homeschooling then, and then continued to homeschool them for the next until Gracie was in 6th grade. So I'm not homeschooling right now, but they're at a small private school that is a ministry of our church, and that's been a good fit for them. But that's kind of my background, what kind of led me to where I'm at today. But it's been my joy, like for the past 10 years, just to be there, to be a support, and to consult with moms and dads, grandparents, helping them along the way to sometimes get over a hump, or just to give them information, knowledge. I've just loved serving this community. It's been an amazing ride, and I'm looking forward to now, the next leg of the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting you said, when you felt like, because we're talking about budget today, and you said that you felt like you had to hold it all together. And I think we forget that trust part, where God just says, you know what, I've got this. Will you just let go so I can give you what I want to give you, instead of what you're trying to hold on to that isn't enough? And a lot of times we do that. We're like, well, if I can do this, and we got this mentality that if I can just do enough, then I can maximize this enough. I can budget it enough. I can save enough. And God's economics don't work that way. They've never worked that way for me. It's like when you finally say, okay, I'm letting go. I know you've got something better. You've set me on this track. I'm pretty confident that this is what you called me to do. You got to take, it over. And sometimes it takes us to the point where we hit rock bottom before we let go. But sometimes we just need to realize that those steps forward, even though we don't know where they're going to land us, they'll be perfect, and they will be supplied for. And I think that's a really good way to kind of dive into that whole conversation too. And we have great plans. We have great plans for our homeschool. We have great plans for our children. We have great plans for ourselves. But those plans can never measure up to the plans that God has. And we can't go back and say, look what he did when we're the one who got in the way and did it all either.
Yes. I'm guilty of that so many times. I think just mentality. I mean, usually there's not anything I can do anyway, but just mentally I'm taking that on when I don't need to take it on because he's got that. He's got it. And we do need to trust in him. I think we say that we trust in God sometimes, but really we're putting a lot of reliance on ourselves and a lot of undue pressure that we don't need to take on by ourselves. Absolutely.
Yeah. I see we have some people watching live. Just know that if you are watching live, you can put comments and questions. Maybe there's some things that you're having trouble with in your homeschool budget, or with being, trying to figure out how to make something more affordable or even possible within your homeschool. Or maybe there's a service or something for your student and you're going, I have no idea how this is going to happen. Throw it out. Let us talk it over with you. That's why we're here and why we're live. So we definitely want you to feel like you're part of this conversation as well. And speaking of that, just know that we used to send out weekly emails about our broadcasts that were coming up. That has moved a little bit, not particularly on my choice. There was some major platform issues with where we were hosting that. I won't go into that, but let's just say we've circumvented the problem, and now we have at spedhomeschool.com/calendar is where you can see the upcoming broadcast now. And also, under each of those links, there is a button to join a group. And that group is where you can post questions for upcoming conversations. You can converse with me or any of the other podcast hosts, with some of our guests that pop on there as well. And it'll be an ongoing conversation throughout the week, not just once a week for the podcast that you listen to or the broadcast. So we want to be there as a form of support for you. That there is an additional fee. It's $5 a month, not a whole lot to get that kind of support. But look into that as a possible way to just stay connected. Have people that know what you're going through. So again, that's spedhomeschool.com /calendar. You can check that out. So yeah, lots of new things and changes going on at SPED Homeschool. We're super excited about all those things, and there'll be more to come. So we're going to talk about budget, but specifically we're going to talk about how in the past you, Krisa, and other people that are homeschool consultants have helped people to maximize their budgets. Because a lot of times we go in, and I know this was my experience. I was like, okay, I can spend this much money, and I'm going to teach this, so I'm going to spend it all on books, and yet not all of it really worked. The way it kind of like formulated in my mind versus the way it actually turned out, there was always more expenses. There was always things that I missed, or I didn't even use at all. And so yes, definitely thinking about, it would have been wise to maybe talk to somebody about this.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I know just in talking with all of the thousands of people I have over the years, probably a very common theme is, well, I started with this math program and then I had to buy this math program. So,
yes. I know people have libraries.
Yes. And it's expensive. I mean, curriculum materials are not cheap. It is an investment. And I think sometimes, and they're important. I'm not saying that curriculum materials aren't important. But sometimes there are other things that can be tweaked, so you don't have to throw the whole curriculum out and do away. Keep investing over and over again. And I think that's one of the biggest helps of working with a consultant is that a consultant is someone who has experience, they have background. This is what they do day in and day out. They just they're researching constantly. They have, sometimes they have, education background in a specific area that you might be working with your child. So just that one fact that you're not maybe going to run through 3 curriculums in 1 year. I mean, it's going to make everybody a lot happier. And I know that I've talked, like I said, to so many people, their initial call to me might have been, well, we've really been struggling with multiplication facts. So now I'm looking at this program, and this program. Which one should I buy? Because this will be my third for the year, and I might be able, not every time, but I might be able to say to them, hey, I don't know that you necessarily have to get rid of that curriculum. How about if we have more breaks? Or have you thought about giving him a different place to do his work? Or can you stay a little bit closer? In other words, I'm giving some suggestions and support that don't have to do with that book or the workbook, but are going to be more sometimes behavioral. Sometimes they're just setting them up for success. They're helping them to get more organized with their time, helping them with time management. I mean, they're just all kinds of things. So, I mean, that's the first thing when you talk about budget, where working with a consultant is really going to come in and help, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. We will continue this conversation after a short break.
Have you ever taken a personality test like Myers-Briggs, StrengthsFinder, or the Enneagram? These tools are great for understanding your own strengths and weaknesses. But what if you could do the same for your entire family? Introducing the Family ID Assessment, a free tool that's been designed to help your family grow together. Within minutes, you'll learn about the unique qualities, culture, and shared personality of your family, offering life-changing insights that can strengthen your relationships and improve your family dynamics. And the best part? It's completely free. Visit family-id.com today and start your family's journey to growth and connection with the Family ID Assessment at family-id.com.
Consider this. Without God, can we have a democracy? And if religion is removed from Washington, who pays the ultimate price? There's a new movie out called God's Not Dead and God We Trust. The story of a small-town pastor pushed into the political arena to run against a powerful regime, forcing faith and religion out of American politics. There's no better time for this movie. In today's divided culture, all of this upheaval and yearning for spiritual leadership is America's collective scream to keep God in the forefront. God's Not Dead challenges mainstream liberals in the battle for spiritual leadership, hope, and faith in America. Watch it with your family and friends. And remember the words of Ronald Reagan, without God, democracy will not and cannot long endure. Folks, we are one nation under God. Don't miss God's Not Dead and God We Trust, a Pinnacle Peak production, in theaters September 12th.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.
But there's got to be other things other than curriculum, too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking about, because, when you have a child with special needs, it's just hard. And I'm not even saying maybe a child that has significant learning needs. I'm talking about maybe there's a lot of anxiety, or maybe there's this, I know personally, one of my children, I mean, she could go from 0 to 100 and nothing flat. And just the emotional toll that takes on you, it's a hard job. Homeschooling is not for the faint of heart, and so it's good to have support. But when I would have a day like that where we were all just drained, I mean, there had been shut down as far as academics were concerned. that tended to turn into a shutdown for me as a mom too. So that night, instead of fixing, vegetable soup, which I could do pretty cheaply, I'm like, can we please just go to Chick-fil-A? Like, I'm going to spend more money on eating out or doing things out of convenience because I'm done. Yes. I'm just I'm done. Right. And some of that, I know in my own experience, I didn't work with consultants per se, but when I was in the big thick of homeschooling, I was an educational consultant, and I was on a team of consultants. And so I would be my team. I would be like, after hours, hey, can we please talk about, what I need to do about reading for Gracie, or what I need to do about, this. And so I had that. That was a blessing for me to kind of have coworkers that were there for me to help me. So I think there's just, that can be a money saver. It might seem like that's kind of silly, but just in my own experience, when I'm spending emotionally, I'm going to look for more convenient ways to do things. And that usually involves more money than what I was going to spend. And it can impact your budget over time.
It can impact it hugely. Like, having to have somebody clean your house, do, those convenience meals. And it can even, this isn't like money budget, but this is like family budget. Or relational budgets. It can put a lot of tax on your actual relationships as well, and just cause you to check out, which over time can lead to a lot of problems. And so being set up properly for that, by having someone who can speak wisdom into your life, and you're willing to take that wisdom in. That's another caveat. Yes. You can pay somebody, you can ask a friend, but if you're not willing to take the advice, don't worry about spending the time, because you're wasting your time. You have to be willing to make the changes that somebody suggests as well. And I think though, but if we do invest and we see a person as an expert, we're more likely to say, oh, yes, I need to make those changes, versus somebody just like that says it, on Facebook. You post something in a group and they're like, oh, you need to really do this. And maybe it's good advice, maybe it's not. But you're like, I'm going on to the next person until I hear something I want to hear.
That's true. Well, yeah. And I don't know how many moms I've talked to that just absolutely, again, are sensing that overwhelm, because if they are kind of going to the internet for help, it's like, okay, well, this person says this, and this person says this, and this person says this, but then that person said that, and my mother-in-law is saying this, and I mean, they're just like, what do I do? What am I supposed to do? And so, and then I'm speaking as a consultant. Sometimes I would have to say, I don't know that I know the answer, but I know someone who I can ask, or but again. I loved it when someone who had been everywhere and had so many voices in their heads telling them what to do, and then we could connect, or someone on my team, could connect with them. It kind of just helped them to breathe again, because they didn't feel so overwhelmed. They didn't have that emotional toll that was being taken from them. They could say, okay, I've heard all of that, but now I'm going to talk to an expert, someone who's dedicated their adult career to doing this and working in this sphere. I'm hearing what they're going to say, and now I can make a knowledgeable decision. I don't think consultants should tell you, do that. I mean, you should do this, or, a lot of times I would just lay out one or two things and help them to weigh out all these different pieces of advice that they had gotten. Okay. Yeah. And say, all right, let's look at it from this way. So it's just always great to have someone who's kind of neutral, to be able to step back and help you to see everything from a different perspective, so that you can make an informed decision on what you need to do next. Yeah,
so true. To just take the weight off of you. and to sort that weight based on the many, many experiences they've had. And they're not in the same panic mode that you're in, because oftentimes we are in that panic mode and we're seeking social media, we're reading blogs, we're doing all these things because that's supposedly where the information is. It's not. There's so much, so much out there now, and let's talk a little bit next on just the varying information and why it's so confusing and how it can become more of a burden than helpful too. Mm-hmm. But I think that when you do talk to somebody who isn't in the middle of it and could see it from the outside, they can give you so much clarity so quickly. Versus, I think, and one of the biggest things I speak on at homeschool conferences is fear. And I know so much of our community is driven from fear that our children will not succeed, fear that we are going to let our children down, fear that I'm going to really mess my kids up. Fear, there's so much fear, and it's not just in our own realm, it's everywhere. When I was diagnosed with cancer, I felt like that, it was just, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. And we just get that message over and over and over again. And to have somebody come in and say, whoa, wait, I've been through this with many people, and here's what you need to take away from that. Here's what you need to leave. And it just alleviates you to be able to say, oh, now that I've kind of seen it from a different level and I hear this perspective, now I can really make a wise decision instead of just a reaction.
Yes, absolutely. I love that, Peggy. And, fear freezes us. It really does. So it's just really good to be able to, I don't think I've ever really thought of it that way, but when you are talking with an educational consultant, you are talking to someone who's not in the midst of it. Now there's I think there's value to talking to someone who's been where you are. Absolutely. Yep. But it's nice to talk to someone who has been where you are, but they're not there now.
Right. Absolutely.
And where they have worked with people who are where you're at. It gives people hope. And I think that's another great thing, a benefit. I know we're talking about budget, money, and the toll, and how to do our best to live within a budget and to access help without it breaking the bank, and how even though that is an investment, that it's a worthwhile investment.
It's an investment for sure. Yeah.
But I hadn't really thought of that before about, now I've completely lost my train of thought. What you were saying. Oh, I forget exactly where I was going with that. But anyway, good stuff.
Yeah. But so let's go back to all the information. Yeah. And just the various information that can be thrown at us from the homeschool sphere, especially social media. And I'm hoping more people are realizing how invaluable it is to get lots of answers to your question. Because, I love when I go on vacation, I've got 3-4 outfits. They're already put together. I don't have to make a decision. I can actually enjoy myself. When I walk into my closet, I go, what do I wear today? I wish I only had 3-4 outfits sometimes. And I think that's the problem in the homeschool realm now is it isn't like when we first started homeschooling where I only had 2-3 options. That was it for curriculum. I just had to make it work. But now there's this overwhelm. And it's debilitating and overwhelm of everybody who thinks they know everything. And they're ready to tell it to you too. And they have the vehicle to give that information to you. And so but it is counterproductive, isn't it?
It is. And I think one thing that I love that SPED Homeschool is doing is that the help that you're offering is really directing people to the right resources. We're not selling anything.
Right.
We're not selling a curriculum. We're not selling a way to homeschool. So, it's just like when I'm going to make any kind of purchase, I want to read a review that didn't come from that company. I know that they're going to say great things about what they have to offer because they're wanting to make money, and so I think that's hard to navigate these days because everyone's trying to, especially when it comes to social media. There are just so many people that they're trying to, that's a means of income for them.
Right.
And I don't begrudge that at all. I'm just saying that sometimes we have to be aware that the information that you're going to get is going to be filtered through that. So they may be pushing a certain curriculum because that's the curriculum that they've written and that they're selling, or they might be pushing a certain way or ideology of homeschooling, and the advice that they're giving is all going to be filtered through that. And so that makes it especially tricky. And then sometimes it's just advice that people are gleaning from blogs or from posts on social media. I mean, that it doesn't necessarily be it's not tied to some type of financial needs or wanting to be an influencer or something like that. But it's just a lot. I used to tell people, let me be your Google for you.
Right, absolutely.
Let me narrow things down for you so that you're not, you can just get lost and go down all these rabbit holes, by going to Pinterest and going to, all these different avenues for information. I think I heard this back in the spring. I unfortunately don't recall the name of the gal that was speaking, but it was a podcast that I was listening to. And she was talking about how we really need to steward the information that we're taking in, because we weren't really designed to know everything. I mean, that kind of relates to news and stories and what's happening in the world. I mean, we're not designed to burden all of that and to handle all of that. And when people are looking for answers, they are so concerned. I mean, I love homeschool moms so much because they are often making sacrifices financially. They've left jobs, sometimes like really great incomes. They've left that because they are concerned about their child's education. And when their child is struggling, they feel that deeply. I mean, I was a classroom teacher for 20 years, and when I had a kid that was struggling, I felt the burden of that and the responsibility of that. But it wasn't anything like the burden and the responsibility I felt when I noticed that my own child was struggling with reading, I mean, that's a whole new level. And so when you got a mama that's in that state of mind, and hurting and struggling, and she sees her child struggling. And then they go to the internet and they're like, and then finally they find, someone like myself to talk to. They're like, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, they finally breathe.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard them say, I can't even think. I can't even make a decision anymore. I have gotten so much information. I don't know which way to go. And so there's great value in that. Huge, great value in it.
Yes, absolutely. And then you can make those decisions informed much more quickly. And you can just move on. And so you're not like losing time. You're not, trying curriculums that even if you downloaded a free sample, your child's going to get confused. They're going to get off track. And we know the kids in our community, they need consistency. And so there just isn't a lot of as much time as if you had a typical learner that was a little more flexible. Oh yeah, let's just take a couple weeks to just kind of have fun. And I know if I did with that with my kids when they were younger, it was be like, oh yay, free for all the rest of the year. This is our new schedule. So yeah, that wasn't going to happen.
And I will say this too, because I have always been so budget conscious and trying to homeschool on a shoestring budget. Sometimes I would use those free downloads for curriculum from sometimes not every year, but sometimes I did, and inevitably I would be saying, okay, so today we're going to. I forgot to print off the little mini book, and then I've got to leave. And then I lose my kids, because they're like, Mommy wasn't ready, because I completely just didn't have my ducks in a row, because I hadn't printed off all 300 pages of what I needed to print off. I was doing it a little bit at a time. So that was another thing that I would often say to moms and dads that I was talking to is go ahead and spend the money and buy the real thing. Sometimes actually, it is cheaper up front, but in the long run, it can be less expensive than literally.
Right. And the consultant, Dawn, that we talked with last week on the show, she too said, one of the things that she does as a consultant, just know there's different kinds of homeschool consultants. There's diagnosticians you can work with who are diagnose specific, and or those that work on curriculum adaptation, or those that can help you with more executive functioning and planning. Everybody has different specialties. But Dawn said that she will even take all of the curriculums you have and set up a schedule. And so all you do is open and go, just like a prepackaged homeschool, like out of a box, but it would be custom made. So there are people like that can do that. And over time, that it may even be cheaper for you and much more effective than trying to buy a all-in-one curriculum for a student that maybe is at all these different levels and has different interests. So there's just so many. It's customizable, and we always. I'm sure you found this too, but the more that a parent gets comfortable in homeschooling, the more eclectic you become, especially in our realm, because our kids are just so unique that you have to be pulling things from, this end to that end and everywhere in between.
Definitely. Hey, Peggy, I thought about something that I just, wanted to bring up too. I guess this has maybe a little bit more to do with consulting, but it could, not as much with consulting as maybe with curriculum, but it could be both. But I always encourage people, to kind of what we were talking about at the very beginning, to be open to how God can make a way where you don't think that there is a way. Even in my own situation, when I saw some signs of dyslexia pretty early on with my kids, and God had already prepared a way, because I was working literally every single day with a reading specialist. My, our good friend Faith Behrens was a huge help to me. And and one thing that teachers do is we share information. I mean, I taught in a lot of different schools over 20 years. But one thing we always had in common is that we didn't really want to recreate the wheel, and we didn't want our co-teachers to reinvent the wheel either. We would share. And so I think that's another role of a consultant, is to share information. And it's so helpful when you're in the trenches of homeschooling to try not to not go it alone. There's no reason to go it alone.
No, there isn't.
There's help for you, but just be open, make the need known, I think, is what I would really like to say. So in my situation, when I was really needing some professional help, God already laid that out, and I had that in my friend that was perfectly prepared to help me with my child's learning needs. But also, like, even with curriculum, I had my heart set on a certain curriculum one year, and I couldn't afford to just buy it outright. And I ran into a friend, and I had said, I think, are you homeschooling? Aren't you homeschooling? She's like, yeah, we are. And we kind of made a connection there. And then the following year, we were talking about, what our plans were. And I was like, oh, I really wanted to use this curriculum, but I don't think I'm going to be able to swing it. And she's like, what level do you need? And I told her, and she's like, I've got that, and I'm not going to need it for the next 2 years. You can borrow it. Like, she had it already there.
Mm-hmm.
But if I hadn't made my need known, if I tried to hold that in or act like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, I've got it all together and I can get that, we have to make ourselves vulnerable, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And just like what you were saying earlier, that when you, not only do you have to make yourself vulnerable, but then you also need to be teachable.
Yes.
and that's just so very, very important when you're working with someone else, to be open to other ideas and to let go of, having your hands on it and trying to see things through your own way. Sometimes there's a different way, and being open to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do know a lot of curriculum companies do offer scholarships too. That if they know that you're in need, it'll be through a certain organization. And I know I've talked with a couple companies already that they would like to set that up through SPED Homeschool, so we can identify people in need that could use their curriculum, but they have a financial need and can't afford the full price. So, so that is something that hopefully we will have built into our new program coming up. That yes, and so so there are ways that other people can get you connected with the resources that you need. And it's not going to cost you what you think it's going to cost you, especially if it is something you can't swing. But yes, the homeschool community is so very supportive. But I know there's a lot of new people that have come into our community, though, especially since 2020, and a lot of them have made it a money-making business, which has caused those of us who have been around for a while to really kind of, especially those that come in and say, I'm going to charge you like this much for this. And I'm like going, ugh. And people are actually paying you that because that it was unthought of to even ask that much when, years ago. And maybe, I don't think inflation's gone up that much. But they're used to the public school costs. And so they're charging those prices. And unfortunately, people that have come out of the public school realms or private school realms are like, yeah, I guess that's what it costs. And so they pay it. And so anyways, I see that as a great advantage for working with somebody who's been around the block a couple times because they know who the people are and the companies are that are established, that have really legitimate homeschool curriculum, not curriculum that was developed for a classroom and then they stamp homeschool on it, because that is a whole different place to be. If you, if you are just starting homeschooling, just know that using a curriculum that was created for a classroom may not be the best fit, especially if a classroom environment did not work originally for your child.
Right.
But yes, because they tend to add, more hands-on things, more things for auditory learners, visual learners, than those supplemental things that you'd have in a classroom.
Right.
Is there other things that I'm missing?
I'm thinking about, as a former classroom teacher, I typically had 22 students. And I know there are other teachers that have had classroom sizes much larger than that, but my last 10 years I taught kindergartners. So those curriculum programs that were designed for the classroom are going to have, for lack of a better term, like filler activities, because you need something busy work for students to do while you're working with smaller groups. And so that's really not necessary in a homeschool setting. You don't have to have busy work, because you can be much more productive and do things that are really meaningful to the child, instead of it being something that was really designed for classroom management. And classroom management's a lot different when you have 1 or 2 kids or 4 or even 5 is completely different than a class of 22.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, I'd like to kind of just
as we are wrapping up this conversation, talk about what the vision of our new consulting program that we haven't even started to, I mean, Chris and I met this morning and just started brainstorming about some ideas. So nothing's really established. If you're watching and go, I'd really like this as part of your consulting program, pop it in the notes. And if you're listening on the podcast or you watch this video later, send us an email at office@spedhomeschool.com. We really do want as much feedback as possible to create a program that really helps you. And gives you the resources that you need to be successful. And we won't know that until you tell us.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, Peggy, as you know, my heart is for a lot of these newer homeschool families that are coming into our community. They may really feel like they're homeschooling out of desperation.
Yeah.
I know so many, every single week I was talking to families like this that honestly they didn't want to be homeschooling, but they felt they had no choice. And their backs were against the wall. And so they are like, okay, I'm withdrawing him on Friday and we're going to start on Monday. And I need help. And I work full time and my husband's a truck driver and we don't know anything about homeschooling. Can you help us out?
Right.
And what I love about the potential of what we could do at SPED Homeschool is that we can be there. Well, we can already be there for families like that right now because you've got a platform set up where people can connect with other homeschool moms and dads, but also with people that are in the field and that have been in the homeschool realm for many, many years and that are experts in their field. They can already do that with a certain level of subscription. But I think what the vision is
very mild. It's $5 and you get into 3 groups that are run by consultants. Ask your questions. Because you're not just going to get the overwhelm. You're going to get an answer to your question. Right.
And so I love that that's already set up, but I think like what the potential could be is even for families that need some really specific nitty-gritty help or they want one-on-one consultation, that would be accessible to them without having to pay $50 to $75 an hour, to be able to get that. It's available.
And that's a pretty low cost.
That would be kind of a low
consultants compared to what some consultants charge. But still, we understand that can still be a burden for some of you. And so, yes.
Absolutely. And that's my heart. Is to be able. I know for myself that would have been very difficult to pay $50 an hour or $75 an hour if I had to do it to get the help that my child needed and that I needed to be able to help my child, I would do it. But I love that the potential is there for just a monthly rate that they could talk to a consultant and get some one-on-one help. So that's kind of the vision. And I think it's very needed because there are so many families like the ones that I just described that really have zero background in homeschooling. I know even when I came into homeschooling 15 years ago or so, I get a little less than 15 years ago, but the world has changed since then. And I chose to homeschool, like my husband said, you've been teaching everybody else's kids, now it's time to teach our own. That was a choice we made because we felt that was the best avenue to educate our children. That's what we wanted. People said, you're a public school teacher, don't you think your kids need socialization? And I said, I'm homeschooling because of socialization. I knew even as a kindergarten teacher, with babies that I was teaching that I would have been hard pressed for my baby to be in some of my own classes because of some of the shenanigans that went on, and the socialization that I didn't want my child to be socialized with. So, anyway, I kind of got off on a tangent there, but
but a lot of people don't choose. And in our community, we found that we were the most prepared for COVID because the majority of us didn't start homeschooling because we wanted to. I'm in that boat. I was ready to send my kids to private school, restart my career, and I was happy until my son was diagnosed. And then my world and my my future, as far as I was concerned, fell apart. But you know what? I look back on that and I am so, so thankful. And I love giving that testimony because, that was 21 years ago that I started on that journey. And, my kids are all adults now. And I can see where both of those trajectories would have taken me. And this is so much better. But, it required me dying to a lot of dreams that I had for myself, for God to replace them with other ones that are so much better. I just have to, say that, and better for my family, better for me, and just better for others. So,
and because you made that choice, then that's making it possible for other people to make that choice too. Yeah. So, I love that. And that God knew about that 21 years ago, Peggy. He knew about who you're going to be able to serve and help, a couple of decades down the road because of that.
Yeah.
Not only your own family.
Yeah. Allie's watching us and she said, I can't wait for the consultant program for my autistic child. It's my second year homeschooling. So just know, Allie, that we do have a couple things going. Once a month, we do have, and this will be on the calendar fairly soon, but there'll be a once a month get together for group consulting with one of our consultants, and it'll be a Zoom call where you actually get on, bring the curriculum that's not working, and she'll help you kind of figure out some ways that you can change it up. So, so that's one thing we do have coming up fairly soon. Like I said, there'll be some things that are rolling out, but again, those groups that are on the platform on spedhomeschool.com too, that those will help you in the meantime too. But there is definitely more to come, and the one-on-one help for sure is a vision that we're just kind of figuring out how best to roll that out and to make it most effective for you. And yeah, so. And plus, we want the right consultants on board too. Krisa and I have a lot of connections and expertises in areas from reading to just across the board, everything that you would probably ever want an expert on. And we want to be able to not just say, oh, here's a general homeschool consultant. No, what is the thing you're struggling with? And how can we match you up with someone who has that specialization so that you can get answers quicker instead of spending hours with somebody that we know your time is so valuable. Yes. And so we want to make sure that you get the resources and the help that you need, that you specifically need. So, yeah, so excited. Yeah,
it's going to be great.
It is. It absolutely is. So, yes.
And I think unique in the homeschool world right now, because I feel like we're kind of holding the line a little bit, like we want things to be accessible and not driven because we're trying, again, to sell something necessary,
Exactly.
So that helps us to be able to do what we're doing, as an organization, just to serve families and to be a support to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Krisa. I have appreciated this conversation, to be able to talk, to dream. It's one of my favorite things to do, is to just figure out how to solve problems and see where God is at work and how we can join him in that work. That's really what life is all about. You talked about making things more accessible, and I know for years you people have been asking me, where do we get the transcripts for your broadcast? Well, guess what? I got something to share with you. We are now posting not only the transcripts, but if you look for all of, on this page, it's our content library on our website, you'll see these places where our broadcasts are. So right here is the new podcast that came out today, was the conversation that was 2 weeks ago with Stephanie. and her guest Jen. Well, you can catch, if you go into this thing right on our website, you'll find not only the YouTube video link, but this little button right here will play the podcast for you. And if you go down to the bottom, well, it has all the show notes in here. But if you go down to the bottom right here, you can download the transcript too. So if you want to take notes, if you have a hard time hearing, all of that's there for you now. And I'm so thankful we've finally been able to do that. It has taken technology a while to catch up because our finances weren't there to be able to pay for that service. But now technology does such a good job on its own that we have been able to do that. So definitely head over to our website at spedhomeschool.com/resources. And our content library has all of that, as well as lots of other stuff too. So yeah, and you'll be seeing more of Krisa around on our site. I'm just going to be doing a lot of background research, but like I said, reach out, office@spedhomeschool.com if you have any feedback for us on what you would like to see added to this program. We definitely want to hear from you. So reach out to us out there. So next week, my guest, let me see if I can pull this up here. My guest is going to talk about screen-savvy parenting, navigating tech with biblical boundaries. So we're going to be talking with both a pastor and an IT specialist who's going to help us to navigate those waters. The internet is becoming a scarier and scarier place. And unfortunately, the more I hear from parents with kids with special needs, and this is not kids with special needs that have like severe special needs. These are the kids that kind of get left in the middle, those that just struggle in little areas that are looking for a place to belong. And unfortunately, there are places on the internet that can really suck our kids in. And it's becoming very scary, and it's leading to a lot of mental health issues as well. So I really just encourage you to join us for that conversation, whether you can join us live or listen to the podcast or watch the video later. It's an important conversation for us to be having right now. So I hope you can join us for that. Thank you again, Krisa. I'm looking forward to working with you. And thank you. Yeah. And thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next week here on same time, same place. And until then, take care and God bless. Bye, everybody.
I want to take just a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on this podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
Our world can feel chaotic and uncertain, but we don't have to live enslaved to fear. Christ has promised me and you his peace, and throughout Scripture has provided powerful tools and practical steps to help us experience greater freedom. I'm Jennifer Slattery, lead host of the Faith Over Fear podcast, inviting you to join me and my team as together we learn how to starve our fears and feed our faith. Subscribe at lifeaudio.com or wherever you access podcast content.